welcome to the Horse Hour podcast. I'm Amy Stevenson. My guest today is Fay Schofield from the Brooke charity. The Brooke has recently been the Charity of the Year at Bolesworth International. One of their ambassadors is Charlotte Dujardins, and this weekend they announced Jessica Mendoza as an ambassador too. They're a great charity, and Fay's going to share all her experiences, including going for a visit to Pakistan to see how the charity firsthand helps horses, donkeys and mules. This is Horse Hour. Welcome to the Horse Hour podcast. We have a guest today who I've been looking forward to talking to for a long time because we've seen them a lot on social media. They do great work for horse welfare. It's Fay Schofield from the Brooke. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Really good, thank you. Can you explain to us what's your role, just to start with, what's your role at the Brooke, Fay?
Yeah, sure. So I'm social media manager for Brooke. It's my job to basically manage Brooke's presence across social media, so Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. It's all about sort of raising awareness of our work overseas, obviously communicating with supporters, and yeah, just basically keeping our online audience informed about what Brooke's doing to help working horses, donkeys and mules in a nutshell.
And working horses and donkeys and mules, are they the ones that have to drag the carts around and they're working in really hot heat? Do you do things with the UK as well?
No, so the Brooke only works overseas. So we work in 11 countries across Asia, Africa, and Central America. So obviously we have teams out in each of the countries, or we partner up with different organisations out there. We work with so many different types of equines that do really varied work. So everything from donkeys working in coal mines in Pakistan to horses working in brick kilns in India. So the Brooke's work is very much about obviously kind of working with the communities that use these animals in order to make an income, and obviously doing sort of community engagement and training. We also work really heavily with service providers out in country, so everything from government vets and doing training with those guys to farriers. So yeah. So
it's about education as well, because I think the tricky thing is the people that own these animals, they're making a living, and the only way that they can make a living is by having the animals and using them. But it's ensuring that the horses, the donkeys and the mules are looked after, well fed, well cared for, not overworked. You've got a very, very big mission, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the Brooke hit a milestone last year where we actually reached 2 million working equines in a year.
Wow.
So, and I mean, but there's 100 million working equines worldwide, so it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Hold on, let's just take that number in. 100 million working equines.
Yeah, around the world. So that's
That's insane.
It's a huge number. But obviously, you know, we're doing everything that we can, and this is why social media is really, really important for the Brooke. Not only because it allows us to obviously connect with our supporters and, you know, inform them of what's going on, but it's a great way to be able to raise funds as well for the Brooke. So to be able to raise money in that way. So I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we actually launched an emergency appeal in Kenya. So there was a drought that hit Kenya, was declared a national disaster by the Kenyan government. Government aid had started for people and livestock, but unfortunately donkeys aren't classed as livestock. So they were actually missed out of the government's emergency plan. The Brooke actually have a team based in Nairobi in Kenya. And so we basically got together to launch an emergency appeal to raise just over £23,500 in order to be able to help 14,000 donkeys across Kenya. So that was everything from providing water and hay to veterinary treatment, but also fuel for like boreholes as well, in which communities would go and actually get water for themselves and their donkeys. And thankfully, due to sort of the generosity and the dedication of our supporters, we managed to raise that money in just over 10 days.
It's nice to see where the money's being spent, but also I'm so proud of our horse hour community because they really got behind this and they raised a lot of money for you. Now you have some really big names supporting the Brook, don't you? You have Charlotte Dujardins. She's is she a brand ambassador?
That's amazing for us. Not only is Charlotte a really well-known equestrian, so obviously it allows us to obviously speak to sort of, equestrians in the UK, but obviously, off the back of her Olympic wins, and obviously with the Allegro as well, her support has, it's really allowed us to tap into new audiences, which is great. Charlotte actually went over to see Brooke's work in India about a year and a half ago. So obviously she was out there and she visited brick kilns and she went to an equine fair, which was great. It was a great experience, obviously, both for Charlotte to actually see the work that Brooke does with her own eyes, but obviously it was great for us as well, because obviously sort of the content that we got off the back of that trip really allowed us to sort of promote Brooke in a new way that we actually hadn't done before. So having the support of Charlotte, we've also got Richard Waygood, who was obviously chef d'équipe of the Olympic dressage team, and he's an ambassador as well, and he's supported the Brook for a number of years now. So it's really good, and it's really nice for Brooke to actually have support, of sort of top level equestrians here in the UK.
Yes. How did the Brook start?
The Brook actually started back in 1934. So the Brook was founded by a woman called Dorothy Brooke, which is where we get our name from. She was based out in Egypt in around the 1930s, and she basically, obviously, the World War One had just ended. Lots of horses were actually used throughout World War One, but many of them were abandoned. Sort of across Africa, and many of these horses were either just like I say, just turned out and just abandoned, or many of them were sold actually into hard labour. So Dorothy Brooke was actually, she was appalled to find sort of the hundreds of emaciated and worn out animals basically in desperate need of help. So she actually wrote a letter to the Morning Post, which later became the Daily Telegraph newspaper today, exposing their plight. Basically, it was brilliant because the public were so moved that they actually sent her the equivalent of £20,000 in today's money to actually help the suffering of these war horses.
Wow.
Yeah, so within 3 years, Dorothy Brooke actually purchased 5,000 ex-war horses, many of which were, old, exhausted, and actually had to be humanely put down. But obviously, thanks to her compassion, their lives ended peacefully, rather than obviously just being left to suffer or whatever. And she actually founded the Old War Horse Memorial Hospital in Cairo, which later became the Brooke Hospital for Animals. So our roots are very much, due to the war horses that were actually involved in World War One and kind of the suffering towards the end that they had to endure. So that's where Brooke started.
What a lovely lady!
Yeah.
What a really, really lovely lady. And your Brooke Hospital then? Where's that?
So Brooke Hospital was actually the original name of Brooke. So the first hospital was actually based in Cairo. The Brooke itself doesn't actually have hospitals anymore, just because obviously our work is more about being sustainable and obviously working with communities in that sort of sense. However, many of the country programs, so for example in Pakistan, actually have wayside stations, so it's basically almost like an NHS walk-in for horses, donkeys and mules, where owners can take their equines to obviously be treated by Brooke staff or by Brooke partners. So we started off obviously based in Egypt back in 1934 with one hospital, and obviously now we've grown to operating in 11 countries around the world, funding projects in 4, with obviously hundreds of people out there to actually help working horses, donkeys and mules. So the Brook's evolved quite a lot over
That's
the last
huge.
it's evolved quite a lot over the last 100 years, Just
Oh my
amazing.
gosh, she'd be so proud, wouldn't
Yeah,
she?
hopefully. But yeah, so it's all thanks to her that we started. So yeah.
Is it a big team that you have there, Faye?
So in the UK, there's about 100 people who work at our head office in London. So that's everyone from kind of the fundraising team. So obviously, fundraising team, communications team, etc. We've also got our service provision team here, animal welfare, and our research team. So obviously, these are the guys that actually help our colleagues out in country to devise the best way for training and all that kind of thing. We have our advocacy team, and then around the world, I think there's around 700 to 800 members of Brooke staff globally, and this is vets, animal welfare experts, advocacy and development specialists. But we also work, obviously, with numerous kind of other smaller organisations actually out in country who actually help us reach, more animals, more owners, and actually allows us to actually spread across a bigger distance. So the Brook is quite sizable, but obviously with the work, with the need of working equines, we need a big team to be able to achieve it all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the big questions that is quite often asked when it comes to charities is the percentage of the money raised. What's the percentage that actually goes to helping the horses? But out of your appeal, all of it went to help them, didn't it?
Yeah, so and we were obviously with charities and kind of, with data protection and all that kind of thing, it's really, really important for Brooke as a charity to be completely transparent with our supporters. So with the Kenya appeal, 23,600, all of it went directly to actually work on the ground. Any money that was actually raised over that amount would still go directly to the Kenya team. So it's really important for us to obviously be incredibly transparent with our supporters about where their money is actually going, and especially when it is an emergency appeal and the need is so great as it is currently in Kenya at the minute. So yeah.
No, that's really good. It's really nice. It's nice to hear that. So the money you raised, £23,000, did you say it was?
23,600, yeah.
Okay, so you raised wow, you raised a lot of money. So you raised £23,600 that went over to Kenya. So how has that been helping the horses, donkeys, and mules over there now?
The main kind of areas that our team are actually working out in Kenya is obviously it's water, food, and veterinary treatment. So obviously there was cases of some donkeys weren't having, and this is donkeys and their owners as well. This isn't just owners not wanting to give their donkeys water because there literally isn't any. So we had cases come through of where donkeys weren't having a drink for up to 3 or 4 days just because there wasn't any water around. Food was incredibly scarce, so obviously lack of vegetation, the entire landscape's dry. We were hearing cases on the ground of where owners were actually having to feed their donkeys flour and tree bark because there was actually nothing else to actually eat, and then suffering from dehydration and stuff like that. Then obviously donkeys become prone to sort of drought related diseases. So the 23,600 has already been put into practice. So the team out in Nairobi providing fuel for boreholes, which obviously sort of big water pumps which actually provide communities with water. They've been distributing hay and fodder, and they've been given veterinary treatment. So we're in the process at the minute of actually documenting the live updates that we're getting through, and obviously letting our supporters know across Facebook, Twitter and Instagram where their money has actually gone. So so it's amazing.
I think it is amazing, Faye, and I think it's so important to note as well that these aren't just people that don't know how to look after their horses. I know we talked earlier about educating, but this is also about people that want to help them. They love their animals and they really care for them as part of the family, but they don't have the access, they don't have the water available to them. They just need a bit of help.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most of the welfare problems we actually encounter are preventable. So a lot of it is either lack of resources or lack of training. Obviously, with the example of Kenya, that was just, that obviously that drought has hit absolutely everyone. So it's humans as well as animals being affected. Obviously when we work with communities, we make sure that we work with the wider community as well, and obviously kind of instill the message that equines are an essential part of the community for the long term. So we try and work with owners to obviously increase their skills in basic husbandry, for example, and first aid practices, so that they can actually not only manage welfare problems but actually prevent them as well. Obviously kind of adjusting sort of beliefs about animals, so and kind of ensuring that all communities actually really understand the benefit of their working equines. So obviously these working equines are literally the lifeline for many for nearly 600 million people around the world actually rely on working equines, not only to provide an income, but then that income then goes to feed their families and send their children to school, and pay for healthcare. So most of our work is very, very community based. Like obviously we will still provide direct veterinary treatment if and when we have to, but obviously in order to make the future brighter for working equines, it all has to come from within the communities, because then obviously they'll pass that message from generation to generation.
Yeah, well let's take an example. Let's take Stephen for an example. Stephen Kamiri, you can see him on your website if you go to thebrook.org. What's lovely about Stephen is his two donkeys are his friends. I'm going to read this bit, Faye, because I do think it's important. Before I got these two friends of mine, the donkeys, I had no permanent job and no job security. Now I wake up every day, take the donkeys to the river and get money. I've gone far and taken my children to secondary school. I've also bought my own plot, so I know I will always have somewhere to live. And I just think that is, there isn't even a word that explains it.
Yeah,
it's so key to a lot of people that are struggling and that are wanting to use the animals to help for work, so that they can have a better life, so that they can then better their children's life and have a future. And they want to look after their horses and their donkeys and their mules. And by having your education, you're also giving people a future.
Yeah, indeed. That's a really lovely story, actually. And it's, it's really, really heartwarming for us in the UK to obviously get, to hear sort of case studies like that out from the field. And it's a great way, as, obviously with people such as Stephen, he'll then be able to obviously pass on what he's learned, to his community as well. So obviously that animal welfare message keeps on going. And that's obviously really key to be able, to reach as many working equines as possible.
Well, you've seen firsthand the type of traumas that the animals are going through, the equines are going through, because you recently took a trip with the Brook, didn't you? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I did. So back in December last year, I was actually lucky enough to actually go to Pakistan with Brooke. So it was my first trip out to one of the country programs. It was actually quite a big deal for me. Like obviously it'd be a big deal for anyone, but I'd never actually been outside of Europe before, so it was
really
Wow. So the furthest I'd ever been was Turkey, and then it was from Turkey straight to Pakistan. But it was amazing. It was really, really eye-opening. It was really humbling to actually see the work that the Brook do overseas, because obviously when you're sat in London at the HQ and you're raising money and you're talking to supporters on a day-to-day basis, obviously, kind of the resources that we call on are, photos and images and, accounts from other members of staff and case studies, but it's completely different actually going out there and seeing the work firsthand. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. And, it was some of the stuff that I saw was really upsetting. But on the flip side of it, just sort of,
love the way that the Brooke Pakistan team are actually, working with owners and working within communities such as the brick kilns and just kind of the owners themselves. And there was a couple of points where I got a chance to chat to some owners and, ask them sort of the benefits of that they'd seen working from Brooke. And that was great to be able to actually hear firsthand from owners who, have said that their relationship with their, horses, donkeys and mules has improved, from the Brooke, and just sort of the different skills that they've picked up. And yeah, it was amazing. It was absolutely it was amazing. It was a hard trip, but yeah, it was really, really worthwhile.
What about the trip affected you the most?
I would say, to be completely honest, just I know it sounds really typical of when people are like, oh, so what did you learn when you went traveling or whatever, but probably just kind of the culture shock and the difference, kind of the difference in lifestyle that we have here over in the UK versus to the lives that some people have in Pakistan. So for example, one of the days that I actually went out there, we went to a brick kiln. I got talking to this wonderful woman who I think she was only about 34, 35. She'd been working in the brick kiln ever since she was 9 years old. Her family before her had worked in the brick kiln as well, and she was amazing. And she was like, do you want to have a go at making a brick? Which I did, which I was awful at, but she was just sort of, she was explaining that her and her family will aim to make 1,000 bricks a day in order to actually earn money to be able to feed themselves and send their children to school. But the really touching thing about that was that she actually had a mule, or her family had a mule that they obviously would work with in the brick kiln. And she was just sort of saying the stuff that she's learnt from the Brooks community sessions have been really, really beneficial. So, for example, how to look after wounds. So unfortunately, sometimes the harnesses and the tack that's actually available to owners overseas, is very ill-fitting, or it won't fit, it won't fit the horse or the equine properly. So obviously they end up with sort of harness wounds from the rubbing. So she'd actually learnt, how to make sure that the harness fit properly and how to treat that wound. So yeah, so it was, I'd say probably it was a huge culture shock, but at the same time, it was amazing to see the actual relationship that people have with their equines overseas. Because obviously, compared to, obviously we do have working horses in the UK and, sort of sports horses or police horses or whatever. But obviously over there, it's a completely different, sort of work type, and it's, it's vital. It literally is vital for people's survival to be able to work together with their equines and make sure that their equines are in good health. So yeah, probably.
Faye, it breaks my heart when I hear you talk and I think of that little girl and I think of that little donkey and the pain that they're going through. And I'm always stuck between two places. I think one, should they be being used as working animals? If the facilities and resources aren't available, should they be used at all? And then the other half of me thinks, well, without them, they're saving those families as well, because those families are being able to feed themselves, they're being able to go to school and do everything that you just said. So it really is the most difficult moral decision, I think, to know which way is the right way.
Yeah,
I'm sure because if I went, I think it's so admirable what you've done and what Brooke are doing, and I fear that if I was to ever go there, I would just want to take them all home. I don't think I'd be able to leave, and I think I'd probably pick up a lot of families that I just want to send money to, but it's so much bigger than that. The problem is so much bigger.
Yeah.
And how do you, I get the helping and the educating and the growing, and that's brilliant, but things like ill-fitting saddles and painful backs and dragging those bricks and those girls having to make those bricks every day, it just breaks my heart.
Yeah, it is a really, really difficult situation. I mean, one of the most common questions that we actually get asked on social media is, why don't owners use, say, vehicles instead, or mechanized equipment? And it's just, unfortunately, in many cases, vehicles are actually beyond the financial reach of the poor. So not only are they difficult to acquire and difficult to maintain, but they're also exceptionally difficult to repair in developing countries as well, and it's incredibly costly. So obviously over here, for example, if somebody's car breaks down, you can phone AA or Green Flag, and somebody's there within half an hour, off, fix your car and off you go, and you're on your way. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. In countries such as Pakistan, where so many people are actually living below the poverty line, actually getting access to vehicles is becoming more and more costly. And obviously, as the cost continues to rise, more people are actually turning to working animals instead. Obviously, I guess another big sort of factor to consider is obviously that many of these communities have worked with equines for hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of years. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that the UK stopped having working equines, sort of like pit ponies, obviously going down the mines, farm horses and stuff like that. So it's, working equines isn't actually that far away in our own history in the UK. But unfortunately, it's kind of the only means of way of survival that some of these communities actually have around the world. So it is a really, really difficult sort of situation. It was difficult for me as well. Actually going to Pakistan and, seeing some of the things that I saw, and just kind of the environment and the situation that's not only affecting horses, donkeys and mules, but actually affecting the people as well. So I'm just really proud that, I get to work for an organisation that is making a difference, in the ways that we are. So yeah, it is really difficult.
I think it's incredible what you're doing, and I think you're really lucky to be able to firsthand go and help the people and help the equines. And like I said before, it's totally admirable. There's just such a big fight, and I think that it's very easy for us to sit in our ivory towers in the UK and have opinions and say, well, we wouldn't do it like this over here. Well, we're really lucky over here.
Yeah.
And we have the, we're a good country that overall has, we have our issues too, but you can't even compare the two situations. They're incomparable.
Yeah.
So it's our duty to help you as much as we can and support you. And again, thank you to everybody who donated for the 10-day campaign, or for raising that for the Kenya campaign.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So how can we donate to you, Faye?
Yeah, so there's lots and lots of ways that people can get involved with Brooke. So it's everything from, just setting up a direct debit or giving a one-off donation. We actually have lots of different ways that people can fundraise for us. So everything from, doing a sponsored dog walk to doing a sponsored run. We've actually just launched a new campaign, which actually hopefully might be of interest to Horse Hour listeners and tweeters, called My Hackathon. So what we're encouraging or asking people to do is to basically get out and hack their horses in order to help other vulnerable horses around the world. So the challenge that we've set, we're asking people to ride 100 miles in 100 days to raise £100. Riders can either take part alone and ride the 100 miles or share the distance with friends. So obviously, if there's a group of you that would go hacking together, then you can obviously split up the mileage between you. And it's basically by jumping back into the saddle, you get to help horses, vulnerable horses and donkeys and mules overseas overseas, by actually going out and enjoying a hack of your own, really. So yeah,
what a lovely idea, and that's hashtag my hackathon.
Yeah, so if people want to find out more about that, it's literally, if you just head to our website, which is www.thebrook.org/myhackathon, and it's basically, by getting out on your horse and riding, you're making a difference for horses overseas. So that's kind of that's our kind of new big fundraising campaign for summer. So it's a really exciting time for Brooke at the minute.
Oh, I'm so pleased for you. So we can stay up to date by following you on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Twitter is @TheBrook. You can find us on Facebook as well, which is facebook.com/The Brook Charity. We're also on Instagram, just @The Brook Charity. But if nobody caught those links, then if you literally just go to our website, which is www.thebrook.org, then all of the links to our social media are on the bottom, as well as different ways that you can find out what the Brook's up to and actually raise funds for working equines overseas.
And take part in hashtag my hackathon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Tomorrow is such a huge day. It's Nick Roldan's inaugural Sunset Polo Party. And the best news of all is there's huge celebrity riders are going to be there. William Fox Pitt is swapping saddles with Nick Roldan. I mean, we know William's a hero. We know he can do everything, but can he do polo? Well, we'll find out tomorrow. I'll be there from first thing in the morning, and then at 1:15, pop this in your diary, I'll be broadcasting a Facebook Live and a Periscope Live with Nick Roldan and William Fox Pitt on the saddle swapping. So I hope you managed to sneak out of lunch to watch that. Facebook Live, Periscope Live, Nick and William Fox Pitt. It's going to be such a great day. There's loads of celebrity riders going. Scott Brash is going to have a go at polo. There'll be a masterclass on polo. Monty Roberts is going to be there. And it's all raising money for the Brooke and Chestnut Treehouse. So Nick's inaugural Sunset Polo Party is tomorrow evening at Cowdray House in West Sussex. If you'd like to come down, then you can buy some tickets. Just head to Nick's website, nickroldan.com. I'd really, really love to see you there. And just to add to the excitement and the craziness of the day, Jeep is doing 4x4 off-road days. So I know I'm a girl, and I am really sometimes a real girly girl, but I think I might have a go off-roading, because I used to own a Jeep years ago and I loved it. It was so much fun. So hopefully these guys can give me a few tips, and I'll film everything for you so you don't have to miss out. I do hope you get to sneak out of lunch, watch the Facebook Live with Nick and William at 1:15 on Tuesday. In the meantime, you can catch up with all previous episodes of the Horse Hour podcast on our website, horsehour.co.uk. Loads of footage there from Bolesworth International. It's really good this weekend, and also previous events that we've been to. I hope you've had a good week with your horse. It's super busy at the moment because the summer season's here. Do let me know what you've been up to. I'm at Amy Stevenson 1, Horse Hours at Horse Hour, and I will speak to you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Horse Hour. Join the community on Twitter, Mondays, 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern by using the hashtag HorseHour. Follow Amy at Amy Stevenson1 and subscribe to us on Acast, iTunes, Stitcher and Player FM.